Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Owen McKendry. We have just seen Artur BETERBIEV become the first man to defeat DMITRY BIVOL via majority decision. It was all it was sold out to be, wasn't it, Owen? A fantastic fight of the highest class. No silly scorecards, which is fun. I'm so relieved to say. One judge had 116, 112 BETERBIEV, which might be a bit wide for some people, but personally, I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
A little bit to digest, but give me your kind of your reaction in a nutshell to what we've just seen.
Sensational. That's what we watch boxing for. It's what we've been crying out for years. The elite against the elite. Even the exchanges where, although some of their exchanges were landing on gloves, it was just captivating the whole thing. Like the sort of the clash of styles. You talk about styles make fights, but that was perfection. Bivol boxing on the back foot. His footwork's incredible. His sort of distance management for the first five, 6 rounds was exceptional, and then just the constant pressure of Beterbiev. I think it lived up to everything it was made out to be. I don't think it was ever going to be one it was sort of going to flop, but I just think that's, as I said to you off camera, that set the standard now. It's what we have to see in boxing. No more about politics. It's got to be undisputed status. And yeah, it's just, I think, like I say, that got casuals involved. Not as good as Bivol is. Not a lot of casuals will know Dimitri Bivol is. Beterbiev a bit more casual, friendly, being the big knockout puncher. But fights like that, they're just good for the audience in general, new viewers. But yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah, fantastic. I just think it's a scary thought to think that without the Saudi money involved, we might not have seen that fight.
Definitely.
It's seen both these guys retire undefeated, having never fought each other. One thing that I just found fascinating about the fight was Beterbiev does what he does, keeps on applying pressure throughout the 12 rounds, keeps them walking forward,
Hmm.
but he didn't seem to hurt Bivol. That was the thing that surprised me the most. He just kept on walking forward, and Bivol, I'm not saying he obviously would have felt Beterbiev's shots, but he didn't never look like he was hurt. Obviously, didn't go down. And if you consider how all of Beterbiev's fights have gone beforehand, that was one thing that really shocked me. In terms of the story of the fight, Owen, if I had messaged you at the end of round six saying, "How do you think this is going to go?" What would your response have been? Obviously, some would say it's a fight of two halves. I know I was watching
Mm.
on TNT tonight, and Richie Woodall had Bivol winning nearly all of the first half of the fight, and Beterbiev winning nearly pretty much all of the second half of the fight, and he had Beterbiev just winning. How did you feel at the end of round six?
It's a weird one because when I look at the end of round 12, the fight went exactly how I expected it to go. Bivol picking up the early rounds, boxing brilliant on the back foot, and then Beterbiev pressure paying off. But at the end of sort of like you say, round five, and then going into round six and the end of round six, it was sort of thinking Bivol's distance management has been excellent, and I expected it to be, but not to that level from the first sort of half of the fight. It was a point where Beterbiev was sort of swinging and missing, and I was thinking, I know what's going to happen. I'm still convinced, but Bivol's like his footwork is obviously elite. His footwork is unbelievable, but the actual distance management and how well he was managing it did surprise me slightly. Like I knew that's how he'd have to fight, but Jesus had then done against a pressure fighter like Beterbiev. So yeah, say like halfway through, I was expecting Bivol to be up, but a couple of the rounds he won were I don't want to say comfortable, but I just think the distance management in some of the rounds I was a bit surprised by how well he actually managed to keep Beterbiev off. But then someone that's threw 1,023 punches in 12 rounds is fucking stupid.
Yeah, and this might be a strange take for me, but I think Bivol tonight has shown that Beterbiev can be beaten. It can
Hmm.
be done. It is possible. He's not this indestructible monster who
Yeah.
just walks through everyone. Um, I don't want to keep you on because it's late. It's been a long night, but how did you have it? What was your kind of well, at the end of the 12 rounds? It felt like to me on Twitter. I know Twitter's not maybe the best platform to go for expert opinion, but a lot of people were replying to ESBR's tweets and saying they had Bivol winning the fight, not widely, but they had Bivol winning the fight. I know we were talking in the WhatsApp group, and it felt like maybe the Sky's coverage, a lot of them had Bivol winning the fight. However, I'll say it again, Richie Woodall had Beterbiev winning the fight. I know a lot of us had Beterbiev winning the fight.
Hmm.
What was your scorecard? How did you have it?
Yeah, I think 115, 113 was probably the perfect one for me. Sky going into the 11th round, Matthew Macklin saying Beterbiev's way behind. He has to win these last two rounds, and hope almost baffled me because how you can look at that fight and think it would have, they were saying Bivol was 4 or 5 rounds up the way they were speaking. I don't know how you can look at the exchanges and look at that fight and have someone winning that by 4 or 5 rounds at any point of the fight. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think 2 rounds to Beterbiev is about bang on. I don't mind the 116, 112. It's not horrendous. Anything wider than that, I'd definitely be questioning. I don't know about the draw. I do think Batavia have just done enough, but
Mm.
I think, like you say, the first opening rounds, Bivol, he weren't cruising, but in terms of the scorecards, he would have been. Then it's just the pressure, the constant pressure. Like Bivol's output slowed down. A lot of what Bivol was throwing was landing on Beterbiev's gloves
Yeah.
towards the end of the fight. And for me, when obviously landing on gloves and then Beterbiev, it's like he something just clicks in him and then he'll just throw 15, 20, 25 punches in a burst and they're so accurate and some of them it's a bit weird, like some of them he almost just taps, it's almost like he just taps your head just to get a bit of range and then just unloads. So I think Beterbiev was getting more and more success and for me, as I say, Bivol was landing a lot on the gloves late, so 2 rounds, three at a max to
Yeah.
be honest, but I don't see how the Sky cards, to be honest, had Bivol cruising at any stage. That to me is poor,
Yeah.
especially in the position you're in. I know maybe Bivol was Macklin's favourite fighter. I don't know, but for me, you've got to try and remain impartial and on the fence. But yeah, two or 3 rounds to Beterbiev definitely won it for me.
Yeah, I think just one thing I would add on to that is I just think that one of the reasons why Beterbiev has won tonight is I just think Bivol's style of fighting, some judges don't love it in the sense
Hmm.
that some judges might say not enough activity in the rounds,
Yep,
not throwing enough, and when he is throwing, he's not connecting with Beterbiev enough.
absolutely.
And that's not a critique of Dimitri Bivol. I'm in no position to criticize him. It was a very close fight tonight, but that's the only thing I would say he possibly needs to improve
Hmm.
on and to change in order to beat Beterbiev. Final question from me to you, Owen. Surely we've got to see a rematch. The question isn't, are we going to see a rematch? I just pray we do, but very disappointing if we don't. Who would you back in a rematch? Beterbiev or Bivol? What do you think would happen?
I think it's the same result, to be honest. I think Beterbiev wins. I think Beterbiev could actually. I'd back the stoppage this time, but I'd probably say it'd be more likely in a rematch. I think Bivol's team have got to say, look, you can't box on the back foot because he's a pressure fighter. You can't do that for 12 rounds. Your style isn't going to win rounds with the judges against Beterbiev. So I think he'd have to go after him. And I really don't think it ends well if he does go after him. But like you say, I think you hit the nail on the head there. He hasn't got the most, especially in these type of fights, most sort of judge-friendly style. And with a constant pressure fighter like Beterbiev, you know what's going to happen in rounds 7, 8, 9, 10. Then the last couple is where the onslaught comes. So I think Bivol has to go searching, and I don't think he's got the power to take him out. So I'd back a Beterbiev stoppage. I went with 11, but I think I'd back sort of a round 8, a round 9 if they had a
Yeah,
rematch, when
fair
they have
enough.
a rematch.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I really hope so. We'll leave it there, Owen. But thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you for reviewing what's been quite possibly the fight of the year here
Hmm.
between two elite fighters, and I'm just so glad for boxing. It was a great fight. I'm so glad we didn't get any stupid scorecards.
Hmm.
Time after time, boxing shot itself in the foot, or boxing's let itself down, and that didn't happen tonight. Owen, thank you very much for joining me as always, and I'll speak to you again very soon.
Pleasure as always, mate.